This is a really big issue, and it is that most of us are very much goal-oriented when we're having sex. And that means that we're racing to a finish line. We're racing to the finish line of wanting to have an orgasm or ejaculate or whatever it is that's at the finish line. And what happens when we do that and we're in that mind frame is we miss out on all the other stuff leading up to orgasm. And so what I suggest as a practice is actually taking out the end goal of orgasm completely, which can sound very foreign to a lot of people who've spent their whole lives seeing sex as an end goal.
Welcome to the show, Juliet. So awesome to have you. I've seen a lot of your work over the years and really, really excited to have you on our show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm actually really, really excited to be on it.
Brilliant. So cool. And I know you're actually taking a break of your holiday for this podcast. So a special thank you for making that time during time with your family. That's very cool.
It's a pleasure.
Hey, for the people, I know many people know you, but for the people that haven't heard your name before or are not quite clear what you're standing for, what do you actually exactly do?
Okay, good question. Well, I'm a sexologist, so that means that I've studied sex extensively, both at university and in different trainings around the world. And then obviously in my own personal life, I've definitely, I'm in the midst of life and in the midst of a journey myself with sex. So what I do is I educate people holistically about sex, and I work one-on-one with people as a coach. So with couples and with single people, talking about sex, relationships, but I definitely approach the topic from a holistic place. So not just telling people, get in this position and you'll have this type of orgasm. It's more so, how can you feel turned on in everyday life and enjoy sex daily, where it doesn't need to be traditional sex, but enjoy feeling the sexual energy in our body daily. So there's lots of different branches of my business and career, but that's it in a nutshell.
Fascinating. That's really fascinating, because sex is everywhere, but I'm pretty sure it's, from your point of view, not well understood by the masses, right? And even though people might think a lot about it and have a lot of sex, or it's just on their mind, it's definitely in the media. But when it comes to really understanding it, I would think it's probably way less than as much as it's talked about, huh?
I agree. Yeah. I mean, we're not given the proper education as children or as adults about sex that I feel we all deserve. And so the information that's out there is very limited, and there's not much holistic sex education out there for any age group. So yeah.
And how did you get into this line of work? This is a really special field. I didn't even know it existed as such, especially when I hear that it's quite holistic. It's not just about it's not at all about the medical side of things, like or do if I have a sexual like an issue, or a real, like an organ problem that has nothing to do with that, right? So I didn't even know that field really existed until a few years ago.
Well, I studied psychology when I was a lot younger, and then taught yoga, became a mother, and had a bit of a journey with my career and life. And I then studied a master's in sexology, which is quite science-based and is more the scientific study of sex. And so I began, and I did that because I studied sex, because I've always enjoyed talking about it and learning about it, and I feel really comfortable speaking about it. And so, with the intention of spending my life doing something that I love and making money doing that, I wanted to do something that really excited me, and that was sex. So it made sense to study it. And then I studied a lot of Tantra, and traveled the world doing that, and that definitely brought the more holistic approach. And then I've always been very interested in health, and I studied acupuncture. I didn't finish my acupuncture degree, but I did study that, and personally am very interested in holistic health. So that's where that side of things comes from.
Hey, what are the people that you help? Like, what from what walks of lives do they come, or what are sort of the common theme that you come across when people see you?
It's a good question, and because there definitely are themes. And to be honest, often the type of people that come to me and the challenges that they bring reflect where I'm at in life or what I'm going through. So it's interesting shamanically that happens. It's like, so the common themes have been a lot of couples challenges, and that is like low libido or mismatched libido. So one person having a higher libido than the other, and that being very common worldwide. I get a lot of women who come to me who want to increase like the amount of pleasure that they're experiencing, or just explore more sexually and feel more confident doing so, and not feel shame and guilt around their desire to explore in that way. A lot of relationship stuff. And as you can imagine, like I said, people come to me with challenges sexually, but often it has something to do with the fact they hate their job and they're working long hours and they feel stressed, and so suddenly their libido drops and they think it's because there's something wrong with them, when really a change of career can change everything. So like I said, I look at all areas of life, and often it's because people are unhappy in something, a different area of their life to sex, but it's all interlinked.
Wow. Okay. So that's you just said that sort of almost like in a side sentence, but basically that's a really, really big theme, that people are just unhappy in other parts of their lives, and therefore their sex life reflects that.
Yeah, definitely. Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely. Always.
Yeah. That's so important to know, I think, because we often, I think, just look at the effect, like it's about what's really the cause and what's the outcome, and or the symptom. And so the sex life is a good indicator about how our whole life is running.
Yeah, definitely. And not necessarily the amount of sex we're having, because someone who's highly stressed in a highly stressful career and a really shitty relationship could still be having a lot of sex, but it comes down to the quality of that sex and the capacity for deep connection with their partner or lovers or whoever they're sharing that with, and or with themselves. So the quality of sex is more, I guess, more the issue than the quantity for a lot of people.
I see. Yeah. So when you talk about unmatched libido, and you say like one wants more and one less, is that something that is normally an imbalance in either of them? One is imbalanced, therefore they want more than they naturally would have, or the other one lower? Or is it more like we are actually different people and we have different libidos? Is it actually just as we come, and then on top of that, environmental factors change that?
The latter. So definitely, I think we all have differing libidos based on health, different aspects of our health, and this can change throughout life, as anyone listening will know. If we go through, say, pregnancy and birth as a woman, that can change our libido, or having a child that's not sleeping can change everyone's libido, or death of a loved one, stressful career, bad diet, all these things impact our libido. So it ebbs and flows throughout our lifetime, and that's completely normal. But then, so that's the environmental stuff also mixed in. But yeah, some people are just more sexual than others, and that's okay. You know, a lot of humans don't need to be having sex all the time to feel fulfilled and feel joy, and then others really love a lot of sex. And so when we come together in partnership, that can create challenges. Yeah, and that's very common.
Okay, that's interesting that every person is different. However, when I look, and that might be a very different topic, is I heard this line before, that sex sells, right? That so that, you know, sexual news and just, I guess, celebrities make use of that by, wearing really little or making really suggestive poses and pictures. So are there two different things between what people look at and what people might be interested in and what actually is happening in their own bedroom?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's true. Sex sells. I always joke about that. The beautiful images of beautiful people, there's something about it. But it can be definitely very different to what's going on behind closed doors, just like anything in life. We don't know the half of it. I mean, I have an insight into what's going on behind closed doors because I've seen hundreds of people, as clients and couples. But yeah, even my sex life, like people think it's perfect and we must be just sitting having all this deep spiritual sex all day, every day. But we joke and say, there's definitely a difference between what people think we're doing and what actually happens. Like any relationship I've had, there's been challenges, and that's normal. And I'm the first to admit that it's not perfect.
Yeah. And on the upside, I guess, if you have challenges, that's how you can grow. It's really hard to grow if there's success is a poor teacher, I always say, and I think that is true for sex life as well. If something is not right, then I guess a lot of tools of working on it, and I would bet that the people that have worked on it say, well, it's much better than what I expected it to be, because I actually faced something that was there all along.
Definitely, yeah. Yes, that's so true.
Hey, so you talked a little bit about stress and other things that might be not, that definitely don't support the libido. Would you mind if we I would love to hear your tools and your tips around, what works to increase your overall intimacy, especially in long-term relationships, because I think there's a different gear when you go into a longer relationship versus like if you have, you are in the beginning of a relationship. But before we go there, what would be a no libido practice? It's the opposite of, I guess, what we would talk about most of the time. But just like what's an absolute killer? You say, like, if you do this, it will not work. You mentioned already if you're unhappy in your work or something, because I think it makes it really obvious, and people might miss that. The no list. Sometimes just important to have a no to-do list and a to-do list, that type of thing.
Yeah, I like that approach. That's actually really creative to think of it that way. Good one. What not to do, or these are things that are going to kill your libido. Eating really shitty processed food, that would be a big part of low libido. Not drinking enough water, like these are like the absolute basics. Feeling dehydrated, which then dehydrates our genitals, which dries us up. Being in jobs, and I guess it doesn't matter whether you have a job or not, but spending time each day doing things that you dread and hate, and that's a big libido killer. Lack of communication in relationship is a huge killer, and conflict and arguing and the yucky side of relating and really bad communication, that's a libido killer. Abusing alcohol and all the obvious stuff is just going to kill libido over time and decrease, like I said, the quality of sex more than anything. So when that people can use stress as a sex relief. So someone, say, the typical example would be someone who's in a really high power career, is working a lot, and then sleeping with multiple women or men just to kind of distract themselves from the stressful life they're living. The quality of sex guaranteed is shit, but they're using it as a stress relief. So everybody responds in different ways to stress, but yeah, there's some of the basics of libido killers. For your listeners who are listening, thinking, oh, maybe I should, chat to someone about what happened when I was younger, or the relationship challenges I'm going through, I just recommend shopping around for someone. And it may take seeing 3 practitioners until you find the one that suits you, because we're all so different. And it's such a shame when I hear someone say, oh, I saw one psychologist and, he was really shit and I didn't like it. And then they just never see anyone again and write off getting that support. So yeah, shop around.
Great. Well, thanks for that. Yeah, I'm a big believer as well that, I've heard you talking before that there are different phases of a relationship, and that some issues are really common for the early states, and some issues are more common for later states, is what we would call probably a long-term relationship. Would you mind just talking a little bit on that, like what you would see is an issue, like sort of for people who just get into a relationship, and what could happen there, and then what's more sort of like a long-term relationship issue?
Yeah, sure. Well, there's always that so-called honeymoon period that we have in new relationships, that a lot of couples have, where we are really sexually attracted to each other and having a lot of sex, and then that dies down and we wonder what happened. But that's really common. Some challenges that couples do experience in those early days are always, it seems, down to lack of communication about needs and boundaries and desires, and what we need as individuals to be able to open sexually. And, even divulging details of any trauma, or being vulnerable and opening up about what our insecurities are. All these types of things are really important in the early days, because what those conversations do is set up our relationship for success, basically, and our sexual relationship for success. So what can happen is we don't know how to communicate effectively, which is not our fault. It's another thing that we haven't been educated about. Most of us have parents who don't communicate effectively. And so we don't learn those skills. And then we get into a new relationship, and it's just hard to communicate what we need. So that's a challenge that I see a lot of new couples facing, and couples who come to me in the early days. It often can be solved with a couple of sessions just around, okay, like, how can you communicate what you need in a clear way, and a non-threatening way, in a non-judgmental way, and how can we listen to each other more? And listening is such a big part of it. So that's, for new couples, a big challenge. And then for long-term couples, well, lots of challenges seem to come about. I guess, where do I start? Like I've keep saying, like, lack of communication. So increasing communication skills is really important. But also what can happen is couples start out seeing each other on the weekends, and then perhaps moving into a couple of times a week, and then we move in together, and then we see each other every day, and then we're with each other in every moment of every day. And so one challenge that can happen is we spend so much time together that it decreases the polarity between us. So it decreases the magnetism, because we become so accustomed to being around that other person that the attraction drops, not because we don't think they're beautiful, or we don't feel attracted to them. Like, we can look at them and feel attracted, but then just be like, oh, I just don't feel like sex. And that's because there's this lack of magnetism, lack of polarity. So lots of dating coaches or like sex coaches will say, create a date night each night and spend time with each other. And that is something I suggest, especially for parents, because we can fall into, just being around the kids all the time and not having time to ourselves, which is a whole other topic. But what I suggest more than a date night is actually making sure that both people have enough solitude and enough time apart, so that we can create that anticipation to see each other again. And that often helps a lot of couples when they go, oh yeah, I'll schedule in a night a week where I do something for myself and support each other and having solitude. That can help. Yeah, I really do recommend that couples take time to like have romantic getaways. So I'm not always the biggest fan of like having a set date night, but taking time out where you get out of the mundane everyday kind of day-to-day grind and get away and be in different places and different environments, because that often, for lots of couples, when they do that and they choose that and prioritize intimacy and connection without laptops, without phones, etc., that actually can spice things up. So that's like a really practical thing that a couple could do who are listening, is like just book a weekend away, like even if it's just one night, especially if you have kids, one night without the kids, that can do wonders for a relationship.
So what would you like, what are the common ways that you can prioritize sex in your normal life? Like, how can you actually bring that in? Because I was just wondering, like on a press of a button, things don't, like, we humans, we're really multifaceted and quite complex, and you can't just say, look, we schedule it for 7 p.m. on a Wednesday night, or can we?
I know that one's funny, the whole, we'll just do it every Wednesday night. Like I don't resonate with that idea at all, because I could schedule it in and then it gets to that night and I'm like, I'm not in the mood, and I personally don't want to have sex when I'm not in the mood. So how can we like bring it in daily? Well, I think firstly, whether you're single or in a relationship, we need to choose to prioritize connection, intimacy, and ultimately sex. If you're single, then prioritize it with yourself first. And even if you're in a relationship, prioritize it with yourself. So what does it look like to connect with my sexual energy and feel pleasure on a daily basis? That would be a question I ask people. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like directly a sexual thing that you do or a sexual action. Like for me, it's like taking a nice bath with essential oils. That's pleasurable for me. It doesn't mean I'm having multiple orgasms in the bath. It just means I'm closing the door and enjoying space and time by myself. So that's me prioritizing pleasure. And so I'm getting lost with what I'm saying. So prioritizing pleasure daily as an individual. And then if you're in a relationship, it's really important to both be on the same page with prioritizing sex. So if one person, this is where this is where it can get challenging. If one person really wants to prioritize sex in the relationship and the other one is like, well, it's actually not that much of a priority, like work is priority now or whatever, then that's where it can get tricky, because if you want to have a great sex life, you both need to be prioritizing it. And so have the conversation and get on the same page with that. And ask each other, what does that look like for you? Like if we were to prioritize more intimacy and connection and sex, what does that look like? Does that mean we're having sex once a week or every day? Because there's miscommunication that can happen there. Like one person in the relationship may be like, well, if we have it once a week, I'm happy, and the other person wants to have it 3 times a day, and so it's about compromise. But prioritizing is really important, and finding things that you can do for yourself that bring you pleasure.
Are there stereotype needs and wants of men and women, or is that just a misperception?
Oh, look, there's stereotypes that, men can just kind of connect physically and then get on with their day, and women need more emotional connection before they open. And there are stereotypes, but I do like to talk about how women, to feel like they want to open sexually, often they need their heart opened first. So by that, they need to feel safe. They need to feel like they have a really strong heart connection, and then their legs will open basically easier. Whereas for men, it's often that they actually first want to connect sexually, and then their heart opens. So this is more of a tantric belief, but it's like, if we can understand that about each other in heterosexual relationships, obviously I'm being very stereotypical talking about men and women, but if you can understand that about each other, then I guess we just understand each other better. So, like an example of this is men, and this is very stereotypical and talking very in general about men, but men really, sometimes it's like a man would just like their partner to just at least put their hand on their penis to feel like grounded and turned on. And so them knowing that about themselves, they go straight to touch their woman on the genitals. But it's like, if you actually just put your hand on your woman's heart first and breathed with her and kissed her there, like, she's going to be able to melt and surrender and drop more into her sexual energy, then touch her pussy, and that's more of a turn on. So these are like little things that if you knew, you'd probably get a lot more sex if you knew this about each other.
That's not a big ask, is it? We're not talking about 1 hour of breathing together and touching the heart.
No. No. I mean, one thing that's coming up for me is to talk about polarity between two people who are making love. And what I mean by that is having like a yin and a yang, or the masculine or the feminine. And when I say masculine and feminine, I don't mean gender. I just mean two polarizing energies that are playing out in sexual interaction. So, and this is for same-sex couples too, often that for there to be like fireworks and really great ecstatic sex, one person needs to be more in the feminine, which is opening, softening, surrendering, moving, dancing, playing like energy. And then one person needs to be more in that penetrative, and I don't just mean physically penetrative at all, but penetrative energy that's like more yang. When there's those opposing energies happening in the bedroom, that's when fireworks happen. And an example of when it doesn't work is, say, like a personal example would be when I was with women, and we both wanted to be in like the feminine energy, or the yin energy, and there was no one in the yang, so there wasn't any fireworks. So it kind of led to just not much polarity, which didn't work. But that can also happen in relationships between men and women, where we both just want to lie there and starfish, and it just doesn't lead to ecstasy, that's for sure.
Do you have some tips of how to soften into that, because that does benefit that polarization that you're talking about so much?
Yeah, it's such a good topic. You've touched on something that's very common, especially because these days, there's more and more women who are so driven and running businesses and in high-powered careers. And so they have a lot of responsibility and work hard hours. And they're very much in that more the masculine energy of driven results, success, goals, ticking boxes, structure. So they're in that in their day-to-day life, and then they come home and they find it hard to drop into the feminine energy. And I'm one of those women, like when I'm working a lot, I can relate to this, where I come home and then I still want to remain in control and have like structure, but it doesn't work. It just does not work for my sex life. And I can speak for a lot of women and who I've seen and friends, and just like you said, chatting to friends about it, it's common. So what we can do is really like simple things. So choosing feminine practices that allow us to drop into the softer, more receptive energy. So it may just be something like when you get home, prioritizing taking a bath, or laying in the sun for like half an hour at lunchtime and just feeling the sun on our skin and just melting into the ground and like opening and softening and making that a conscious practice, or taking up dancing, like ecstatic dance, or going to dance lessons, doing something that allows us to flow more in that feminine energy. And then that gives us a foundation to be able to take that feeling into our relationship and receive more and surrender more. And but you know, there's also the other side of the coin, that we need to be with partners, whether they're women or men, who can then bring in the more penetrative energy so that we can surrender. So yeah, it always takes two to tango.
Yeah, and I'm sure having a conversation around it also must help, you know, and just acknowledging like, look, you know, I like if you take the lead, or look, I like when you actually soften really up and let me take the lead. And I think that then will open conversation that is wider of like, look, you know, how do I get there, or how do I feel about it, and so on. And as you said in the beginning, the communication must be the absolute key for all of this. Huh?
Yeah, and just asking like, how can I best, if it's between a man and a woman, the woman wants to be more in her feminine, doesn't know how, but the man could ask the question like, how can I best support you to be in that energy more? What do you need? Do you need me to take the kids for 3 hours every Saturday morning so that you have the house to yourself and you can dance, or you can, you know, do whatever they need to do? So it's like, how can I support you to be in that energy more? And the same goes for women, or the person who wants to hold the masculine pole more. How can I best support you to be in your masculine more? These are the questions we need to ask each other so that we can gain support to fulfill those roles that we want to have.
When you talked about, driven women and, you know, goal-oriented, that can even happen in the bedroom itself, right? That there's quite goal-oriented sex. I certainly have experienced it myself, but also know that can be a real turn-off for one of the people involved, for sure. Can you talk a little bit on that?
Yeah, yes, definitely. This is an epidemic, I think. This is a really big issue, and it is that most of us are very much goal-oriented when we're having sex. And that means that we're racing to a finish line. We're racing to the finish line of wanting to have an orgasm or ejaculate or whatever it is that's at the finish line. And what happens when we do that and we're in that mind frame is we miss out on all the other stuff leading up to orgasm. And so what I suggest as a practice is actually taking out the end goal of orgasm completely, which can sound very foreign to a lot of people who've spent their whole lives seeing sex as an end goal and experiencing it as finishing with an orgasm. But what happens when we go the opposite and we take orgasm out as a goal is we're able to drop into deeper connection, whether it's self-pleasuring, so you can practice this with self-pleasure, or whether it's with another person or more than one person, it doesn't matter. But it just creates deeper connection and intimacy. And for those who only have ever experienced one way of experiencing orgasm, it opens up a whole other, like, all these possibilities of different styles of orgasm and different ways of experiencing our sexual energy, other than, for men, ejaculation, or for women, often clitoral orgasm. So yeah, you know, every now and then a quickie is great, and we all love a quickie, well, most of us do at some stage. But if we can take out having to just get to the orgasm or get to the end, then it just opens up a whole new world of possibilities with sex and connection.
it sounds like there's quite a theme of common things that happen, and I wouldn't be surprised if people in a relationship would experience multiple of these issues. If you could outlay a great sort of practice or path of how you would describe people could get to a point of having a better sex life, how would you start? You did it in fragments anyway, of like having a takeaway, going away for a day, or starting slowly. Or could you sort of put this in one or in a couple of sequences? I think that would really help for people to actually picture, oh, it can be like that.
Okay, well, I'll just speak in general terms
sure.
to both singles and couples. And it may not be what you think. Like, I'm not going to give you really kinky ideas. I'm more going to be giving you really the basics, which is firstly prioritizing intimacy and connection and sex. And so making the decision or the choice to begin exploring that area of your life more with more conscious awareness and with more curiosity, and with a commitment to educate yourself and experience as much as possible. So putting it at the top of your priority list, putting it as a value, like valuing intimacy above all else. So that's the first step. And then once we make that choice in our life, then things always seem to flow on in a more easier way. So the next step is taking care of our health and making that a choice. So eating much less processed food, or fresh fruit and vegetables. I personally prioritize eating organic food, and like making that a choice to eat clean. And then communicating about sex effectively, and learning how to communicate in a relationship, or learning how to communicate if you're single with new lovers or with friends or family, talking about sex more, and seeking out people who you can surround yourself with who already enjoy a great sex life, or who are also curious and interested in prioritizing this area of our lives. So find mentors, friends, teachers who you can be spending time with or listening to, or whether it's you find a podcast you love or something, but something that you can learn more about sex and relationships regularly. So that's like education. And then just learning to enjoy pleasure every day in whatever form that takes. It may be self-pleasuring every day. It may be making love every day, but it may not be. It may just be sitting in the sun for 10 minutes every morning, or committing to one weekend a month we go away together as a couple, or we have like a date night. But just looking at ways that we can introduce pleasure into our life more regularly. And it doesn't necessarily have to be just having wild sex, They're some of the basics that I recommend. And finding someone, like I said, a mentor or a coach, or someone who you can speak to about sex, and speak to about past trauma and belief systems and stories that we have around this area of our life, and creating new stories and new thoughts about the topic, so that we have a more positive experience and create a more positive experience in our life. There's one really great supplement that we can take, which is called maca, which is from Peru, and it's a root, and it's known as nature's Viagra in South America. And that you can take in capsule or powder form, and we have it in our smoothies and like hot drinks. And that increases libido, it increases vaginal lubrication. It's an amazing natural food that we can use, and that I see great results with. Another thing that I recommend is medicinal mushrooms, and I'm a big advocate of that, of bringing them into our daily diet to increase libido. And I'm not an expert, so I'm not going to recommend each one, but you know, you're friends with Mason at Superfeast, so Mason has some really great tips on libido boosting herbs and mushrooms that work. So these are like practical things that people can do straight away that actually do work, that I see results in very quickly.
Yeah, and I know you have a podcast on, well, you have a podcast to start with, and you have a podcast where you actually interview Mason on these different medicinal mushrooms. So that's probably a good one to listen to. If people want to find your podcast, what would they type in? Just your name, Juliet?
Well, the podcast is called Authentic Sex with Juliet Allen. So yeah, if they just type that into iTunes or Spotify or SoundCloud, it's on my website too. They can find it. And as you said, there's an episode on there with Mason. There's so many episodes on there though, like over 100 now, and covering all sorts of topics. So yeah, have a listen if you want to hear more.
And I know you have got a particular class. You've probably online classes all the time, and of course you're coaching, and I'm sure that's online, so people can reach you from all over the world. But you have something really exciting coming up in November. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Or we talked about it quickly before this call.
Yeah, it's called Pleasure School. Pleasure School is an online school that I created approximately a year ago, and it came about because I've been running workshops in Australia and globally, and I wanted to I wanted to stop traveling as much, and I wanted to put all my workshops into one online school where people from all over the world could log in and have instant access to everything. And so I created Pleasure School, and it's a 12-month experience. And so people sign up and become a student and then have access to different lessons. And there's a new lesson that comes out every 2 weeks that has journaling questions and guided home study that accompanies the lessons. And there's all different teachers on there, not just me. So I believe in, bringing in experts in different areas that I can't talk about. And my partner, Nick, also does lots of different lessons for men in particular on there too. And yeah, like you said, it opens again for new enrollments November 2nd and will be open for 10 days. So if people are interested in learning more and being in a community of people who are really committed to this area of their life, then it's a great resource.
Something else that I heard you talking about, and now I make the connection. You were saying before we got on the call that you love infrared saunas, and I thought like, yeah, that's nice, but you know what? I mean, that's great. We're selling infrared saunas, so good for us. But what has that to do with libido? And then now that we've spoken a little bit about it, and you were talking particularly about stress and softening up and so on, there must be a connection there. Would you say that's why you love it, or you just love it?
Yeah. Look, I actually was hoping you'd bring this up, because when I talk about pleasure daily, one thing that I do is have lots of saunas, and I actually prefer going to the sauna by myself, and just, it's like my time out, and it's super relaxing, and it's actually being in the sauna turns me on, to, if I were to be super honest with you. And like, I just feel like juiced up after just sweating out all the toxins and then having an ice cold shower afterwards. I love it. And I'm, so looking forward to being home again. We've been traveling for 8 months now around Australia, but once we're home, I cannot wait to get back into regular saunas, because I feel like they're really beneficial for my health, and I often recommend them to clients too.
Yeah. They actually do move fluids around as well in the body, like especially the lymphatic system, but also, well, in general, opens up the blood vessels. And I guess as you were talking about, you need to actually be juiced up to really have beautiful sex. Then that might actually contribute to that as well. And I guess you take more fluid in as well, or you should when you do an infrared sauna. So that's actually really beneficial then in that as well.
Yeah, I think the benefits would be endless for saunas, but I definitely recommend them for people who want to increase libido and who want to feel more turned on. There's so many benefits. So yeah, I can't wait to get one.
Before I let you go, there was one other thing that I would love you here talking about, and that's we connect with the heart before we connect physically maybe, but there are a couple of other things that you were saying as well on another podcast that I listened to, and there was also connect with the mind and with the gut, and then we connect with sex. Would you mind just to explain that a little bit, because I think it sounded really profound, but I couldn't quite make sense out of it.
Yeah, that's something that I teach, and there's a lesson or a couple of lessons and even a guided meditation on this in Pleasure School. So basically what I teach is there's 4 centers in our body, and to really experience ecstatic sex and also long-term relationships, we want to have a yes at the 4 centers. So the centers are our genitals, so our sex center. So we want to have a yes there, which is like sexual attraction, and then our tummy, which is like that gut feeling or that intuition that we have about someone or sex, and then our heart center, so feeling like a heart connection, and then our head, so our head is like that voice in our head that analyzes everything and often gets in the way of us listening to our heart. But having a yes at all 4 centers is optimum, and definitely when you do have a yes at all 4 centers, I've noticed myself and also with many people and clients that we can enjoy more ecstatic sex. So yeah, but you know what, lots of people don't know how to access like feeling in tune to those areas in their body, which is why I've created a guided meditation for that.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I guess lots of people though say to me, but how do I know if I have a yes or no? Like people are so disconnected from their body and their heart and their genitals that they don't even know how to like drop into that center of their body and feel into it. And so that can be a process in itself, to be that in tune with our body, that we can make choices from those centers in all areas of our life, not just sex.
Great. Thanks for that. We always finish off this podcast with three questions. So the first one is, what gets you out of bed each day?
Good question. What gets me out of bed? Well, the sunshine does. I love sun, and I love a morning ritual of often sitting in the sun and drinking like a really nice cacao elixir that has heaps of medicinal mushrooms and all sorts of things in it that pep me up and feel great in my body. So that gets me out of bed. And then doing what I do for work is like so exciting. I absolutely love what I do, and that gets me out of bed every single day. Like I have to hold back on working lots because I just bloody love it. So that's my answer to that.
Thanks. Yeah, that sounds familiar. And just right now, like what are you really into? What are you really interested in? Is there a field that you're studying at the moment, or a book that you love, or a podcast that you love? Anything in particular that sort of is on top of your mind?
What comes to mind is just learning to rest more and enjoy nothingness. That's something that I'm really interested in cultivating in my life, because I've definitely been go for a long time now, and when I have opportunities to rest, I notice that I fill in those gaps with new creations, or I'm having to do something, and that's come from being around my parents who are always like that. And so I am interested in learning to do nothing and be okay with doing nothing, and be okay with just sitting in the sun and just enjoying the nothingness.
Hey, and the last question is, why do you think we exist on Earth? Why do you think we are here? Why do you think humans are here?
Oh my gosh, that's like such a big question. Just to I don't know, what comes to me is to like enjoy creation and enjoy connection and enjoy joy and feel more joy. And you know, it's like a whole other podcast episode, my thoughts on humans right now. I think we're just out of control and mostly not feeling connected to nature and not feeling connected to the simple rituals of life. But for me, that's what life's about, is just like filling up my cup and enjoying time with my friends. And yeah,
Beautiful.
that's what comes to mind.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thanks, Juliet. That was a really beautiful conversation. I really enjoyed this topic, because I think it's one that it is often thought of, but I wonder how often people really talk about it in this from this angle. And I think I definitely see there's huge value in finding a coach like yourself. And luckily you are online, so you can be reached from anywhere. And I really recommend to people to really drop into it and look how they can improve their lives. So it's an amazing service that you do, everyone, because I think it's so needed now more than ever. Hey.
Definitely, I agree. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate your time and your interest in these topics, and applaud you for bringing these conversations into the world and talking about it publicly. So thank you.
Anytime, Juliet. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and let's keep in touch. I love your work, and keep listening to your podcast. They're awesome.
Yeah, definitely keep in touch. Definitely.
Awesome. Beautiful. Thank you very much.
Best. Thank you.